The wind howled across the barren landscape of Lyra 7, a lifeless mining colony now at the center of a galactic standoff. The sky churned with streaks of green and purple, a natural aurora from the planet's magnetic storms. Captain Mike Harris squinted through the visor of his helmet, scanning the horizon for movement. The air was thick with tension, the kind that seeped into your bones and told you something was watching. "Keep it tight," Harris ordered, his voice firm but calm. Behind him, the team moved like shadows, their footsteps muffled against the rocky ground. Specialist Lena Carter adjusted the straps on her backpack, the weight of the makeshift sensor array digging into her shoulders. Despite her NASA background, this mission was worlds away from the labs where she once tinkered with spacecraft designs. Here, every step felt like a gamble with fate. "Anything on the scanner?" Harris asked without turning around. "Not yet," Lena replied, her voice clipped. "But these readings are weird. Electromagnetic interference is all over the place. Could be natural. But—" She let the sentence hang, knowing full well that nothing about this mission was natural. Behind her, Sergeant Eli Walker cradled his sniper rifle, his trained eyes darting from ridge to ridge. His unshakable calm was a balm to the team, though his gruff demeanor often kept people at arm's length. "They're here," he muttered, his southern drawl barely audible. "You don't need a scanner to feel it." Dr. Marcus Bellamy trailed slightly behind, his lanky frame wrapped in a modified suit that looked more like a patched-together lab coat than tactical gear. He was an odd addition to the team, a physicist more comfortable with whiteboards than war zones. Yet, his sharp mind had already saved their lives twice, and Harris wasn't about to question the brass's decision to include him. "If they're here," Bellamy said, adjusting a small device on his wrist, "let's hope they're as overconfident as last time. I'd rather not be reduced to atoms today." The mission was straightforward in theory. Infiltrate the mining facility, recover the stolen Thaliamex, and get out. But the Zircons had made it anything but simple. Towering, insectoid creatures with sleek metallic exoskeletons, they were technologically advanced and ruthless. Their plasma-based weaponry had reduced entire fleets to debris. Humanity's continued reliance on projectile weapons was a running joke among the galactic community. Until now. The first attack came like a thunderclap. Plasma bolts screamed through the air, burning trails of green light into the darkening sky. Harris dove for cover, barking orders into his comms. "Contact! 11 o'clock. Carter, get that shield up." Lena scrambled to activate a portable barrier, a crude but effective device she'd cobbled together using scavenged parts from their last skirmish. The translucent dome shimmered to life, just as another volley of plasma hammered down, scattering debris. Eli had already found high ground, his rifle sighted on the nearest Zircon. He exhaled slowly, steadying his aim, and fired. The crack of the rifle echoed like a challenge to the universe. The bullet punched through the Zircon's shield, striking it square in the thorax. The alien let out a shriek, a sound like grinding metal, and collapsed. "Shields are weak against kinetic impact," Eli confirmed, his voice steady. "They didn't learn last time." "Good," Harris growled. "Let's make it hurt." The team moved as one, a well-oiled machine honed by necessity. Lena's barrier absorbed the brunt of the plasma fire, while Harris and Eli picked off targets with precision. Bellamy crouched behind a jagged outcrop, fiddled with a small device. "I'm trying to scramble their comms," he said, sweat beading on his forehead. "If this works, they'll be shooting blind." "Do it fast," Harris snapped, reloading his weapon. A Zircon drone buzzed overhead, its sleek frame reflecting the eerie light of the auroras. Harris aimed and fired, the drone shattering into fragments. "Carter, how's that sensor array?" "Working on it," Lena replied, her fingers flying over the controls. The array was meant to detect hidden Zircon units, but the planet's electromagnetic chaos was making calibration a nightmare. "Almost there. Got it. We've got 2 more coming in from the west." Harris nodded. "Walker, take point. Bellamy, stay close to Carter. We're moving." The team advanced cautiously, the weight of the moment pressing on them. The Zircons were relentless, their sleek figures darting through the shadows with alien grace. But they weren't invincible. Another burst of gunfire cut down a charging alien, its plasma weapon clattering uselessly to the ground. As they pushed toward the mining facility, the resistance intensified. Plasma blasts illuminated the battlefield, casting flickering shadows against the jagged rocks. Lena's barrier flickered dangerously, the makeshift device straining under the onslaught. "Barrier's failing," she shouted. "Hold it as long as you can." Harris barked, his rifle spitting fire. "Bellamy, any chance you can boost it?" "Not unless you want it to blow us all to hell," Bellamy shot back, though he was already adjusting the device on his wrist. A surge of energy pulsed through the barrier, stabilizing it for a few precious moments. "That's all I've got," he warned. It was enough. With a final coordinated assault, the team broke through the Zircon line, reaching the relative safety of a shallow canyon. Harris signaled for a halt, his chest heaving as he surveyed the team. They were battered but alive. "Why'd they pull back?" Lena asked, her voice tinged with suspicion. "Doesn't matter," Harris replied. "We regroup." Then we. A low rumble cut him off, the ground beneath them trembling. The Zircons hadn't retreated. They were regrouping. A massive war machine loomed in the distance, its spindly legs carving deep grooves into the earth as it approached. Harris's heart sank, but his expression remained steely. "Well," Bellamy muttered, "I guess they've learned a thing or two about escalation." "Let's teach them something else," Harris said, his voice like iron. "We're not done yet." The team's resolve hardened as the war machine's silhouette grew larger. They were outgunned and outnumbered, but they had something the Zircons couldn't replicate: the unyielding human spirit, forged in the crucible of adversity. The canyon was eerily quiet, the kind of silence that sets every nerve on edge. Harris crouched low, his rifle slung across his chest as he scanned the jagged walls for signs of movement. The team had taken shelter in the narrow gorge, a natural bottleneck that offered temporary reprieve from the Zircons' relentless assault. Still, the towering war machine on the horizon was an ominous reminder that their troubles were far from over. "How much time do we have before that thing catches up?" Lena asked, pulling a small multi-tool from her belt to tinker with the sensor array. Her voice carried a mix of frustration and urgency. "Not enough," Eli replied, his tone flat as he leaned against the canyon wall, sharpening his knife. "Machines like that don't need rest. It's just a matter of when, not if." Bellamy paced nearby, muttering to himself as he examined a salvaged piece of Zircon tech. His lanky frame cast a long shadow in the dim light filtering through the canyon. "This interference is making everything harder," he said, holding up the glowing fragment. "If I could just isolate the plasma core, we might be able to rig something useful." "Then stop talking and start isolating," Harris snapped. His voice wasn't unkind, but it left no room for argument. "That machine's designed to wipe us out, and I don't plan on making it easy for them." Lena blew out a breath, brushing sweat-soaked strands of hair from her face. She wasn't built for combat, not like Harris or Eli, but she'd learned to adapt quickly. Her mind raced as she studied the terrain. "We could use this canyon," she said, her voice steadying as an idea took shape. "If we rig a few traps, we might be able to slow it down, maybe even disable it." Eli glanced up, a faint smirk tugging at the corner of his mouth. "You're talking my language now." Harris nodded. "Fine. Walker, Carter, you're on traps. Make it count. Bellamy, keep working on whatever miracle you're cooking up. I'll keep watch." The team moved with purpose, each member falling into their role like cogs in a well-oiled machine. Eli's survivalist instincts kicked in as he scouted the canyon for natural choke points. He used lengths of high-tensile wire and explosive charges to rig deadly snares, his hands moving with practiced efficiency. Lena followed behind, setting up pressure-sensitive mines with materials scavenged from the Zircons' fallen drones. "You ever think about how weird this is?" she asked as they worked. "Us fighting aliens with scrap metal and duct tape. Feels like we should be outclassed." Eli chuckled softly, his voice carrying a rare note of warmth. "Outclassed, maybe. Outthought. Not a chance. You give a human a problem, they'll find a solution, no matter how ugly it looks." Bellamy, seated a few meters away, grunted in agreement as he soldered wires to the glowing plasma core. That's our edge. Zircons rely on predictability. Perfect calculations, flawless execution. But humans? We thrive on chaos. We make it an art form. Harris's voice crackled through their comms. Less philosophy, more action. That machine's closer than I'd like. The ground shuddered, a faint tremor growing stronger with each passing second. The war machine was coming, its hulking frame visible now above the canyon's edge. It moved with terrifying precision, its legs carving into the rock like scythes. The plasma cannons mounted on its sides pulsed with an eerie green glow, charging for the inevitable strike. Positions! Harris barked, his voice cutting through the rising tension. Eli climbed to a ledge overlooking the canyon, his sniper rifle at the ready. Lena and Bellamy took cover near the traps, their makeshift detonators primed. Harris stood at the forefront, his rifle aimed at the approaching behemoth. The plan was simple. Slow it down, create an opening, and hit it with everything they had. The first trap triggered with a deafening crack. One of Eli's snares yanked a massive slab of rock free, sending it crashing onto the war machine's front legs. Sparks flew as the impact forced the machine to halt, its balance momentarily compromised. Direct hit, Eli called out, already lining up his next shot. The war machine responded with cold efficiency, its cannons swiveling toward the ledge. A plasma bolt streaked past, missing Eli by inches, but leaving a scorched crater in its wake. He cursed under his breath, shifting position to avoid the next barrage. Lena's mines activated next, erupting in a chain reaction that engulfed the machine in fire and smoke. The ground trembled beneath the force of the explosions, and for a moment, it seemed as though they'd succeeded. But as the smoke cleared, the machine emerged, battered but unbroken. Its cannons burned brighter, the plasma charging for another deadly volley. Bellamy, now would be a good time for that miracle, Harris said, his voice steady despite the chaos. Bellamy didn't respond immediately, his attention locked on the device in his hands. Almost there, he muttered, connecting the final wire. The salvaged plasma core hummed to life, emitting a low, rhythmic pulse. Done. But you're not going to like this. It needs to be delivered manually. Harris didn't hesitate. Give it to me. Bellamy handed over the device, his expression grim. Get close enough, attach it to the power node on its undercarriage, and it'll fry its systems. But you'll have about 10 seconds to get clear. Plenty of time, Harris said, his tone leaving no room for doubt. He looked at Lena and Eli. Cover me. Lena's heart pounded as she watched Harris dart toward the machine, the device clutched tightly in his hand. Eli's rifle cracked again and again, each shot aimed at the machine's sensors to blind it temporarily. Lena focused on keeping the traps active, triggering whatever explosives remained to disorient the enemy. Harris reached the machine's underside, the heat from its plasma core searing through his armor. With practiced precision, he attached the device to the power node and sprinted away. The war machine hesitated, its movements jerky and unnatural as the device began to pulse faster. Everyone down, Harris shouted, diving behind a rock just as the device detonated. The explosion was blinding, a surge of energy that tore through the machine's core. Its legs buckled, and with a groan of twisting metal, the once unstoppable behemoth collapsed. Silence fell over the canyon, broken only by the sound of Harris's labored breathing. Is it dead? Lena asked, her voice trembling. Harris pushed himself to his feet, his face streaked with soot but triumphant. It's dead. Let's move before they send reinforcements. The team regrouped, battered but alive. As they climbed out of the canyon, Harris glanced back at the smoking remains of the war machine. The Zircons had underestimated humanity, and they were going to regret it. The air was thick with the acrid stench of burnt metal and ozone as the team climbed out of the canyon. The wreckage of the war machine lay sprawled below, its smoking carcass a testament to human ingenuity. Yet there was no time to celebrate. The Zircons wouldn't let this defeat go unanswered, and the team knew reinforcements were inevitable. Harris led the way, his rifle held steady as they approached the mining facility. The structure loomed ahead, a monolithic relic of industrial ambition. Its walls, reinforced with alien alloys, gleamed faintly under Lyra 7's swirling auroras. Somewhere inside, the stolen Thalium X was waiting, and likely heavily guarded. Lena adjusted the straps of her pack, her steps quickening to match Harris's pace. "We're walking into a trap," she said, her voice low. "Of course we are," Harris replied without slowing. "But we don't have the luxury of waiting. Every second we waste is another step closer to Earth running out of options." Eli scanned the horizon, his sharp eyes catching movement near the facility's perimeter. "We've got patrols, 3, maybe 4. Standard pattern. But they're too far apart for coordinated fire. We can take M." Harris nodded. "Walker, you and Carter flank right. Bellamy and I will handle the left. Quiet kills. Don't draw attention until we're inside." The team split off, moving like shadows against the rocky terrain. Eli's sniper rifle made short work of the first guard, the silenced shot dropping the Zircon with surgical precision. Lena crept forward, her hand steady as she rigged a small explosive to the patrol's path. The second guard was vaporized in a flash of light and heat, the explosion masked by the planet's ambient noise. Bellamy, meanwhile, clung to Harris's side, his unsteady grip on a salvaged plasma pistol betraying his nerves. "Not exactly my area of expertise," he muttered, gesturing to the weapon. "Point and shoot," Harris said curtly. "You're here because you think faster than they do. Don't forget that." They reached the facility's outer wall and regrouped. Lena studied the main entrance, her brow furrowed. "They'll have a kill zone waiting for us inside. If we go through the front, we're as good as dead." "Suggestions?" Harris asked. Lena pointed to a ventilation shaft running along the facility's side. "There. It's narrow, but it'll bypass their defenses. I can rig a signal jammer to give us a clean window." "Good," Harris said. "Walker, cover the entrance. Bellamy, you're with Carter. Let's move." The team crawled through the shaft, the confined space amplifying every scrape and breath. Lena worked quickly, attaching her makeshift jammer to the facility's network hub. A faint hum signaled its activation, scrambling the Zircon's communications. "That'll buy us a few minutes," she whispered. The shaft opened into a maintenance corridor, dimly lit and eerily quiet. Harris signaled for the team to fan out, each member scanning their surroundings. They moved deeper into the facility, their footsteps muffled against the metal floor. The central chamber came into view, a cavernous room dominated by the Thalium X storage unit. The crystalline material pulsed with an otherworldly light, encased in a protective shell of alien design. Surrounding it were a dozen Zircons, their insectoid forms gleaming under the harsh lights. At their center stood a taller figure, its exoskeleton adorned with intricate markings. The commander. Harris motioned for the team to take cover behind a stack of crates. "We take out the commander first," he murmured. "Without leadership, they'll crumble. Carter, rig the explosives. Walker, take the high ground. Bellamy, you're with me." Lena nodded, her fingers deftly assembling a cluster of charges from her dwindling supply. Eli slipped away, his rifle slung over his shoulder as he scaled the room's scaffolding. Bellamy stayed close to Harris, his plasma pistol shaking slightly in his grip. The first explosion rocked the chamber, sending Zircon sprawling. Eli's rifle cracked, the commander's head snapping back as a bullet pierced its crown. Chaos erupted as the remaining aliens scrambled to respond, their plasma fire lighting up the room. Harris and Bellamy surged forward, using the confusion to close the distance. Harris's rifle barked with precision, each shot felling a Zircon before it could react. Bellamy, to his credit, found his nerve, firing bursts of plasma at the disoriented aliens. Lena triggered a second explosion, the shockwave scattering debris and disabling the remaining guards. "Clear," she shouted, rushing toward the Thalium X container. "This is it." The ground beneath them trembled, a low rumble that grew into a deafening roar. From the shadows emerged a new figure, larger than the others, its exoskeleton reinforced with what looked like molten steel. The Zircon warlord. "Of course there's a boss fight," Bellamy muttered, retreating toward cover. The warlord unleashed a torrent of plasma, forcing the team to scatter. Harris ducked behind a fallen beam, his mind racing. "We can't fight this thing head-on," he said into the comms. "Ideas?" Lena's voice crackled in his ear. "The Thallium X. It's unstable under high-energy conditions. If we overload it, it'll blow us all to hell," Harris finished. "Great plan. Got a better one," she shot back. Harris grimaced. "Fine. Bellamy, rig the overload. Carter, Walker, keep it distracted." Eli's rifle cracked again, the shot bouncing harmlessly off the warlord's armor. "Not much I can do with this," he said, "but I'll buy you time." Lena darted between cover, tossing a grenade that exploded in a flash of light and sound. The warlord turned toward her, its plasma cannons charging. "Any time now," she yelled. Bellamy worked frantically, his hands a blur as he manipulated the Thallium X containment unit. "Almost there," he said, sweat dripping down his face. "Just a few more." "Done," he shouted, diving for cover. The containment unit began to glow brighter, its pulses accelerating. "Fall back," Harris ordered, grabbing Lena and pulling her toward the exit. Eli dropped from the scaffolding, firing one last shot before retreating. The warlord roared, its plasma cannons aimed at the glowing unit. The explosion was blinding, a wave of energy that consumed the chamber in an instant. The shockwave propelled the team into the maintenance corridor, the air thick with smoke and heat. Coughing, Harris pushed himself to his feet. "Everyone alive?" "Define alive," Bellamy wheezed, clutching his side. Lena grinned despite the soot streaking her face. "We did it." Eli nodded, his expression as stoic as ever. "Let's hope that was the worst of it." Harris glanced back at the smoldering ruins of the chamber. The Zircons had learned the hard way what humans were capable of, and they weren't likely to forget.